What is happening? J Game Dude here, and we're going to be talking about Konami and their many failures of the past. Because when I actually made that video about Kojima, how it would be a dream for him to actually be able to work on Metal Gear once again, I saw a surprising amount of hate towards Kojima and calling him unoriginal and things like that, and I thought to myself, hold on. Metal Gear, Zone of the Enders, as well as Death Stranding, I feel like Kojima's not really a bland or stale kind of guy. I feel like he's got a lot of intriguing, interesting, yet incredibly bonkers ideas for games. So with that surprising amount of hate, I then came with the idea, hey, hold on, how about we talk about the misgivings of Konami's past and why people incredibly distrust Konami? Now, unfortunately, of all of the sites that I could find that actually have a decent list of the failures of Konami from the past, I unfortunately had to go to a WatchMojo website. I had to go to watchmojo.com to actually find this list of Konami fails, and it covers most of what I want, pretty much all of what I wanted to talk about, and a couple of extra bits and pieces that I'm probably not really going to talk in too much depth about. But let's just kind of jump into it and actually look at why the gaming community, especially the older gaming community like myself, do not trust Konami, especially since we've been gaming since like the late 90s, if not early 2000s. Well, that's myself in particular, but let's just kind of jump into that right away. Now, this first one I didn't actually know was Konami, but 6 Days in Fallujah was supposed to be an incredibly realistic video game based on an actual war that happened. And effectively what ended up happening was the developer Atomic Games were meant to release this game. It got an incredible amount of backlash due to trying to recreate realistic war depictions of an actual war that happened. Some backlash happened, and effectively Konami backed out instantly out of that partnership, and it almost felt like as if the paperwork that was signed between the developer Atomic Games and the publisher Konami almost had no recompense for Konami backing out, whereas obviously I don't think Atomic Games backing out would not have zero consequences of it. This was really just more of a case of an absolute dick move, but I didn't realize that this 6 Days in Fallujah was originally supposed to be Konami helping a developer with that project. So that was actually an interesting one at that. That being said, Blades of Time, I think this was like, 2012, I want to say? I could be completely wrong about that. There was a game called X-Blades, and it was meant to have been like, not well, it says here a spiritual successor. I thought it was supposed to be kind of like a sequel. They just did zero marketing for it, but then again, this is kind of like the failings of what the game is going, what Konami was going to be moving forward. This was a precursor to a few different things, because doing very little advertising or marketing for one of their biggest titles really just isn't good. But it isn't necessarily such a bad thing. Again, 6 Days in Fallujah, dick move, zero promotion for Blades of Time. That's just like, okay, I forgot to, send an email that one time. Here's where we start to kind of get really, really into the terrible releases of Konami that they've kind of just done for maybe the better part of the last 10 years. Pro Evo, for those of you guys that don't know, incredibly popular football title that was kind of in contention with FIFA for the longest time, though FIFA always edged out as like the better game every single time, but Pro Evo was always there in a nice way. Now, it's talking about the 2016 port here, but what I want to specifically talk about is going to be when Pro Evo went free to play. When they did, they released the game across multiple platforms, and it was, I think, Pro Evo 2022, I want to say. That was the first time they went free to play. So that free to play game exists, and then every year they just update the title while updating the roster. Makes sense, right? Every year You just update the roster, but the same game is always there. They don't release a new game. Instead, they'll rename Pro Evo 2022 to Pro Evo 2023. Well, they renamed it now from Pro Evo to eFootball. So it'll be eFootball 2022, eFootball 2023. Keep the same game, but just change the title each year and update the teams, because it's an online-only football game. When it went free to play, there was barely any modes, the game was buggy as hell, the graphics looked absolutely terrible, and you could find a decent amount of compilations of videos of like Pro Evo just absolutely looking and playing absolutely rubbish, which is why in modern day, when it comes to remakes and re-releases and it comes to Konami, it really does not look particularly good, especially when you look at, say, something like Silent Hill 2. I look at Silent Hill 2 remake and I think to myself, hold on, the game looks kinda off, and also the developers have not made a particularly good horror game in a long ass time, and yet they are going to be remaking one of the greatest horror games of all time. There's a bit of concern there, but I digress. So that's a failing more in recent memory of Konami, and it feels like it's kind of carrying through with Silent Hill 2 remake, but I hope not. I hope not for that sake. Speaking of Silent Hill, so this one is in relation to two things about Silent Hill. I'm not going to read the paragraph because I can already see the name of one particular game that I want to talk about. But more specifically, Konami tried to bring back Silent Hill. So they had a few different ways of doing that. One was a god-awful game called Silent Hill Book of Memories for the PS Vita, which is I think it's like a top-down RPG with some multiplayer elements to it, rather than making it a horror game of any sort in any way, shape, or form. Silent Hill Downpour, which was one of the better Western-developed Silent Hill games after Silent Hill 4 The Room, if I remember right. But even then, it was a god-awful game compared to something like Homecoming. And then you also had the re-release of Silent Hill 2 and 3 on PS3 and 360 as part of the Silent Hill HD collection. The Silent Hill HD collection was god-awful. It was completely broken. The audio didn't work. The game looked awful. The audio syncing was completely off. Graphically, it looked terrible. It crashed a lot. Anything that you could think of that is wrong with the release of a game was wrong with this HD collection. So effectively, Silent Hill Book of Memories was conceptually wrong and ill-conceived in every sense of the word as an idea. Downpour and Homecoming weren't particularly good Silent Hill games, and this was also late 2000s, early 2010s. And finally, Silent Hill HD collection, which I have a physical copy of sitting right behind me, is just a god-awful HD collection in every sense of the word. So Silent Hill was just absolutely being torn to shreds at this point, and why we feel like that's when Resident Evil really started to take over. Even though Resident Evil 5 and 6 weren't particularly well received and were bad Resident Evil games, even then they were still doing better than whatever the hell Silent Hill was trying to do at the time. In the early 2010s, Resident Evil 5 and 6, Jesus Christ. That being said, E3 2010 press conference, it is god-awful, but do look it up if you're interested. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't actually remember this too much off the top of my head. Censoring YouTube personalities. Now, this was an interesting one, specifically around Jim Sterling, where I suppose now James Stephanie Sterling, after coming out trans, had a section within their show, the Jimquisition, called Fuck Konami News, which was effectively... See, I was thinking in my mind, how do I actually say the title of this segment without completely going off the bender on this one? But yeah, Fuck Konami News was always a corner on anything Konami did wrong would just be a constant news section, and Konami did a lot of things wrong, almost to the point where they got so annoyed with James Stephanie Sterling now that they tried to actually silence the individual by attempting to shut them down, blacklist them from the industry, stop them from getting codes, ultimately left the escapists to pursue their own ventures and things like that. So definitely a big thing that happened there in regarding like larger than life YouTube personalities being censored by Konami, and that was kind of like a really weird thing, because you don't, like, say for example if EA started like handing out not lawsuits but like constant DMCA takedowns on people's channels and things like that, that's kind of like what Konami would have been like regarding like censoring YouTubers and things like that. Now this one hurts me. This next one hurts me to my core, to the point where I can't in good consciousness ever think Konami could do anything good. Kojima was working with Konami, and during this period of time, around 2015, 2016, a demo was released for the PS4 for free. People sat down and played it. It was called PT, which we later realized PT meant playable teaser. And what was a playable teaser for? Well, if you solved the puzzle of the endlessly looping corridor, you would realize, oh, there's a cutscene at the end. Oh, there is Norman Reedus in a cutscene. Oh, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Guillermo del Toro is involved. Oh, Kojima is involved. Oh, it's a Silent Hill reboot involving Kojima, and it's called Silent Hills. And this was the single most exciting game in the entire world for me. But unfortunately, due to the relationship between Kojima and Konami having completely soured due to unknown reasons or unknown individuals that were involved, ended up cancelling the whole thing, and PT also was ripped from the PlayStation Store archives and databases and is now no longer playable in any way, shape or form. Even if you downloaded PT, it would be completely unplayable on PS5. If you connected your PS4 to the internet after downloading it, the PT download would no longer be playable, among other things. You can, if you deleted PT from your PS4 and tried to re-download it, you could not play it anymore. You can't even download it anymore. Oh my god, like this. If there was ever such a thing as removal from the digital ecosystem completely, none more painful, none more priceless as the removal of PT from the PlayStation Store. And it was also the single most exciting game that we will never ever get in our entire lives now. And that sucks. PT was such an excellent idea, and they tried to recreate it with Silent Hill: The Short Message, but it just did not work anywhere near as well. God, that's painful. Unethical working conditions, yeah, sure. Now let's go back to Hideo Kojima for a second here. So, due to the souring of the relationship between Kojima and Konami, the last game that Kojima made was Metal Gear Solid 5. And Metal Gear Solid 5, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, I should say. Not to be confused with Ground Zeroes, which was a demo. Not even a demo, but like a small snippet of what to expect from The Phantom Pain. But The Phantom Pain was the least story-heavy and most gameplay-heavy Metal Gear game of all time, without a doubt. It has the least amount of story, most amount of gameplay, and it was quite a heavy title, so it definitely hit a little bit different for the Metal Gear fan base, but it hits on a very middling area of like when this is supposedly before Big Boss goes evil, but before? No, hold on. So this is during the period of time supposedly when Big Boss is going evil, but before, you know, he clones himself 3 times before we get Solid Snake, Solidus, and Liquid Snake. Just saying. But yeah. So this one was incredibly painful because also Metal Gear Solid 5 got an award at the Game Awards. Unfortunately, Kojima could not actually go and receive the award, which was probably the most publicly shown amount of something going wrong between Kojima and Konami at the time. Poor promotion for Metal Gear Solid HD Collection, that was also pretty bad. Metal Gear Survive, just its existence is also pretty bad. So this is like the Metal Gear corner of things going wrong, but also keeping in mind that letting go of Kojima, or whatever happened with Kojima, no clue really in particular detail, led to the cancellation of Silent Hills as well. Would Silent Hills have been a good game? Probably not, but PT was definitely the greatest demo of all time, without a doubt. And this one. So, of all of the things that anyone could ever do, whether it be, like it says here, EA, Ubisoft, you think these guys are bad. During this period of time, from the early to mid, if not late 2010s, and late 2000s, I guess, if you want to, consider that bit as well, Konami was putting their money in pachinko machines. Yes, they turned their franchises into gambling machines in Japan that we will never see. They made one for Metal Gear, they made some for Metal Gear, they made some for Silent Hill, they made some for, they put more graphical quality in the cutscenes of their pachinko machines than they do in the Silent Hill 2 remake that is happening at the moment. Those pachinko machine cutscenes look much better than whatever we're getting with these remakes at the moment. So that was also incredibly painful. Hitting the lever, getting those balls, it's just, it really, wow. So I think the biggest problems that Konami has faced during the last 10 years, 100% would have to be turning their franchises into pachinko machines, because they put more quality and effort into that than their actual in-game releases. Letting go of Kojima, because that led to the cancellation of Silent Hills, which was one of the single most exciting horror games of all time, as well as the fact that Metal Gear Survive exists, or the fact that Metal Gear Solid, Hideo Kojima had to let go of his baby, the Metal Gear Solid series as a whole as well. The cancellation of Silent Hills, as I said, the whole thing that happened with the PT demo completely being removed from the PlayStation Store to the point where no one can play it anymore, and is also a deep problem with digital gaming and the all-digital future especially. Censoring YouTube personalities. If you've got a bunch of bad things to say, Konami is going to be there to shut you down, but more specifically, that happened to Jim Sterling at the time. 2010's press conference happened. Silent Hill got absolutely abused in multiple ways, whether it be Silent Hill HD Collection, which was a failure in every sense of the word, Silent Hill Book of Memories, which was just conceptually bad, or the fact that Silent Hill Downpour and Silent Hill Homecoming were not particularly good games. Shattered Memories was actually pretty good. That's all I have to say about Silent Hill, really. Pro Evo, now while it's talking about the 2016 PC port here, the one that I specifically wanted to highlight was when they went free-to-play in 2022 and how god-awful that was. And this was just kind of a dick move with the 6 days in Fallujah by all accounts. So those are kind of I'm sure there's more bigger ones, like how they released Contra Rogue Corp as well. Contra Rogue Corp, the very single thing that makes Contra really, really good, they completely took away. So the idea in Contra is that you should be shooting all the time. So what did they do in Rogue Corp, which is a new Contra title? They add something called weapons heat up, overheating. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. That's what ended up happening. So yeah, it is what it is. These are the reasons why people hate Konami, and this is 10 years of fails. More than that, if anything else. But it's just unfortunate to see Konami be so evil, be so bad at being so evil, whether it be because of Contra Rogue Corp, because of everything they did with Silent Hill during 2012, or the fact that Metal Gear Survive exists, but I digress. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 300 subs by the end of the year. And with all that said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.